Hello and welcome coders to the Sky Coding. So in today's session we will discuss about types of tables which are available to us in Snowflake. We will discuss about temporary table, transient table and the permanent table. Okay. And talking about the previous session, so we have covered time travel, zero copy cloning, data sharing to Snowflake users as well as non-Snowflake users, and we have also covered data loading to the internal stages as well as from the external stages, and we have created the that Snowflake free trial account and AWS S3 account as well. We have created and we have done the configuration as well. Okay, so that's all of, we have covered so far. And if you haven't watched my Snowflake playlist, then there is a link in the description box. You can watch my Snowflake playlist, complete playlist. There are lots of videos which are available to the Snowflake playlist. Okay, so in this session we will discuss about types of tables which are available to us in the Snowflake, and we will discuss about concepts of the types of tables and such as temporary table, permanent table and transient table. And after that we will discuss about the practical of these tables and how to create these tables and what is the retention period, time travel and all those things, because you have to watch that time travel video before watching this table types video, because time travel concept is very important of these table types. Okay, that's why we create these types of tables. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get started and let's understand about these table types which are available to us in the Snowflake. Okay, so let's move ahead. Okay, so basically we are having three types of tables. Snowflake support three types of tables: permanent table, transient table and the temporary table. Okay, and let me give a quick review of these tables. So for the permanent table, whenever you will give the syntax create or replace table and the table name. Okay, so by default your table will be just a permanent table. Okay, you don't have to specify any external property for creating a permanent table. This is having a basic syntax for create or replace table and table name. And the difference is, for the permanent table the retention period is 0 to 90 days, and for the it is also having the fail safe period of 7 days. Okay, so that suppose that we have dropped this table by mistake, then you can just undrop this table within the retention period of 0 to 90 days, or you can just undrop this table data and you can get the data within that 7 days fail safe period as well. Okay, so this is about the permanent table. Okay, and talking about the transient table, so transient table is just like same as the permanent table, but transient table is having only 1 day retention period. Okay, and it will just cost less also in comparison with the permanent table. Okay, so transient table is just having a 1 day retention period, 24 hours, and it is not having any of the fail safe period. Okay, it is having just a zero fail safe period. Okay, suppose that you have dropped this table, so that you can just undrop this table in just 24 hours. Okay, and if you haven't undropped this in 24 hours, and suppose that you thought that after 2 days you want to get this table back, then you cannot do that because it is not having any of the fail safe period. Okay, and talking about the temporary tables, so temporary tables are just for the temporary, for the testing work or the for the development work, and it is for the temporary table, it is not having any of the fail safe period or the retention period. Okay, and these all tables exist in our database. For the these permanent table and the transient table will exist in our database until we drop them explicitly. Okay, and temporary table will automatically drop when you end that session. Okay, so let's understand about these tables one by one. Okay, so first of all we will discuss about the permanent table. Okay, so basically when you will create a table in the Snowflake, then by default the table will be just a permanent. Okay, so default table type in Snowflake. Okay, and these are regular and common tables. These are basically a regular tables which we use to create, and these are basically the common tables. Okay, and table exists until we drop them explicitly. Okay, these tables will remain in the database until we use the drop command to drop them explicitly. Okay, these will remain in our database. Okay, and the time travel for this permanent table is 0 to 90 days according to your Snowflake edition, and you can set any of the retention period. You can set to 20 days, 30 days. Okay, within this 0 to 90 days you can set whatever time you want. Okay, and it is also having the 7 days of fail safe period. Okay, talking about the retention period and fail safe period, so we have discussed all those things in the time travel video. You can watch my that session for better understanding of the retention period and the fail safe method. Okay, retention period is just a time by which you can get back data of your table, database, or the schema. And fail safe period is basically starting when your retention period will end. Suppose that you have in a table and you have set the retention period for that table to 30 days, and suppose that you have dropped that table and retention period of 30 days is also over. Okay, and you have just recognized after 30 days, means on the 32nd day, and you thought that you want the get back data of that table. So how can you get back? There is a 7 days failsafe period. You can just get back data whenever your retention period is also over, then it's okay, but you will get that table by using the failsafe period. Okay, and you will have to contact to the Snowflake support, then you can get back data within the 7 days of the failsafe period. Okay, and this is basically the syntax for creating a permanent table. Create table, table name. Okay, this is basically the normal table we create. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's understand some of the concepts of the transient table as well. Okay, so this is basically the transient table. It is just similar to the permanent tables only, but the basic difference is it is having for retention period just a 1 day for the 24 hours. Okay, and it is also not having of the any of the fail safe period. Okay, no fail safe period. Okay, suppose that you have dropped this table and you want to get back this table after means 2 days, 3 days, then you will not be able to get back this table because it is having just 1 day of the retention period. Okay, so this is basically the difference between permanent table and the transient table. Okay, and these all tables, transient table and the permanent table, exist into our database until we use the drop command to drop them explicitly. Okay, and useful when data protection is not required. Suppose that you have not very important data, so that you can create the transient table and you can store your data into the transient tables, so that the data protection will not be there, means that will also not cost lots of money in your database. Okay, from the Snowflake side. Okay, so that's why you can use that transient table in that way, because the data protection of that and the retention period of the permanent table will be more costly, because it is having just 90 days or 20 days retention period for the permanent table, but here it is having just 1 day retention period. So Snowflake will not cost you more money because it is having just 1 day retention period. Okay, in comparison with the permanent tables. Okay, so defining stage tables as transient is the best practice. Okay, as we will discuss about these external tables on the external stages. Okay, and we can create some of the external tables as well. So we can create just external tables on the external stages. We will not be able to create the external tables on the internal stages. Okay, suppose that you are using any of the cloud services, suppose that AWS S3 or Microsoft Azure or GCP, so that you can create the stage table there. Okay, we will discuss about that thing in our upcoming session, how to create the external tables and how to use that external tables. Okay, so we will discuss about that thing, and we can create the external table and we can give the property as a transient, because it will not cost you the money as well. Okay, and why it is a best practice? Because suppose that you have any external table on the AWS S3, and you have given it as a transient table. Okay, suppose that you have some data, very important data in the table of the external table. Okay, and you have defined just it as a transient, and suppose that that table got dropped by mistake. Okay, then you can get back table, because you are just creating the external table and you can get back that data from the stage. Okay, from that AWS S3 bucket as well, because you are already having that data into the stage. Okay, if table is dropped, that's not matters. Okay, because you will be having data in the external stage as well. Okay, in the AWS S3. Okay, so this is basically the best practice, and we will understand this thing better when we will understand about the external tables, how to create those things. Okay, and syntax for creating a transient table is just like permanent table. You have to just use this transient keyword here. Okay, so create transient table, and after that you can give the table name. Okay, so by this way we can just create a transient table. Okay, so this is all about the transient table. The basic difference between transient table and the permanent table is about the retention period. It is having just 1 day, but table is having a retention period for 0 to 90 days. Okay, and it is not having any of the zero fail safe period, transient table. Okay, so that's all about the transient table and the permanent table. And let's understand a very important table, that is a temporary table. Okay, a table exist only within the session means worksheet. Okay, suppose that you have a one worksheet and you have created one temporary table in that worksheet. Okay, then that temporary table will not be accessed by the another worksheet, and whenever you will move to the another worksheet and you want to access that temporary table of the another worksheet into the another worksheet, then that table will not be accessed into the worksheets. Okay, so this temporary table you will be able to access this table from one worksheet only wherever you have created that table. Okay, so that's about table exists only within the session. Once the session ends, table gets dropped completely and is not recoverable. Okay, suppose that you have created any table in the one session means worksheet. Okay, suppose that you have created one table in the one worksheet, and you have closed that worksheet or you have just logged out, then that table will be dropped automatically. Okay, and you cannot just undrop that table. Okay, that will also not be recoverable. Okay, and these temporary tables are also not visible to the other users or the other sessions. Okay, so suppose that I am having my Snowflake account and I have defined lots of roles there: account admin, system admin. Okay, so suppose that and also my account is using by lots of persons. Okay, so these temporary tables will also not be visible to all the users, means account admin, system admin, and all those things. Okay, so this is will only be visible to the one user, means who will just create this temporary table. It will be just visible to them only within means that session. Okay, and for the session you will not be able to access one temporary table from the another worksheet. Okay, and it is having just 1 day retention period. You can just get back this table with 1 day. Okay, and it is not having any of the fail safe period, and it is just useful for the development work. Okay, so let me explain that how it is useful in the development work. Okay, so for the development work, suppose that I am having a testing team and he wants to do some test on some of the little code, then they can use this temporary table for the testing or the development. Okay, so that's the testing team can use this table and he can store some data in the table for the development. Okay, and this is about useful for the development work, and it can be used in stored procedures for intermediate data storing. Okay, so let me explain you. Okay, so suppose that when we create a stored procedure, and then we use some of the tables for the intermediate data processing. Okay, and suppose that we have thousands of lines of code and I have to do many operations on that code. Okay, and during this I need suppose that during this thousands of code, I have need to store some data in the tables. So in that case we will just use temporary tables for storing data, so that cost will also be not more. Okay, so that's in that way we can use the temporary tables for the stored procedures for the intermediate data storing. Okay, and the syntax for the permanent table is just create, and you will use just temporary keyword. Oh, sorry guys, here I have to write temporary table. Okay, because it is basically the syntax for temporary table. That's a mistake. Okay, sorry for that. So for creating a temporary table, you have to just give create temporary table, and after that you have to give the table name. Okay, so this is basic difference about these transient table, permanent table, and the temporary table. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's understand some of these important points which you need to remember, and after that we will discuss about the diagram. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's understand some of the points. Okay, and it is written here, we can't convert any type of table to the other type. Okay, suppose that you have any table suppose that you have any table, a transient table, then you will not be able to convert the transient table to the permanent table. And suppose that you have any permanent table, then you will not be able to change that permanent table to the temporary table and the transient table. Okay, so we cannot convert any type of table to the other type. Okay, and we can create transient databases and transient schemas as well. Okay, you can create a transient schema or database as well. Okay, the syntax will be just same, create schema. It is basically not normal syntax for creating a permanent schema. And suppose that you want to create a transient schema, so you can give create transient schema and schema name. Okay, so like that way you can create transient databases and schema as well. Okay, and tables create under transient databases schemas are by default transient. Okay, suppose that you have any transient database, and then that all whenever you will create any of the schema in that database, transient database, and any of the table in the transient database, then these all will be by default a transient. Okay, because you are just using the transient database, and transient database is only having a 1 day retention period, then all the schemas and all the tables will be having just a 1 day retention period. Okay, and this thing is very important whenever you will create a transient databases, and then under that schema or database or the tables, all these will be just a transient. Okay, we can create a temporary table with the same name as the permanent table or the transient table. Okay, suppose that you have any customer table and which is just a permanent table, and then you can create the temporary table by that customer name only. Okay, you can create this temporary table with the same name as the permanent or the transient table. Okay, if you query with that table name, it fetches data from the temporary table in that session. Okay, suppose that you have customer table which is a permanent table, and you want to create another table, so we can create a temporary table by customer name only. And whenever we will just query any of the data in the in that session, in that any of the table, then we will just get the data from the temporary table only. We will not be able to access about that permanent table. Okay, for the permanent table, if you want to access the permanent table, then you have to move to the another session and you can access from there. Okay, and if you are having any two tables with the same name, one table is permanent and one table is temporary. Okay, then whenever you will perform any of the select query, then you will able to access the temporary table. Okay, in that session. Okay, and how to find the table type, so we will discuss. You have to just give the show tables or describe table, then there will be one column for the kind. Okay, then you will able to see that which type of table we are having this. Okay, so you can see this thing from there, from the looking at the kind field in by using this show tables property or describe tables. Okay, so this is basically some of the points which you need to remember whenever you are working with the permanent table, temporary table, and the transient table. Okay, and now let's understand these things by one this diagram. Okay, comparison of tables. Okay, so that you can better understand those things. Okay, so here what we are having this this is basically the table type column, and this is the persistence, and this is the time travel retention period, and this is a fail safe. Okay, so for the temporary table, we are not having any of the. Okay, let's understand from here. Okay, so this is a temporary table, and it will just be active until the session is active. Okay, and suppose that you have closed your session or you have just suspended the session, then that temporary table will automatically will be gets dropped. Okay, and it is having just 1 day of the retention period, and it is having a zero fail safe period. Okay, it will is not having any of the fail safe period. Okay, so that's about temporary table. And temporary table will only be accessible to the one worksheet only, and if you will means access this temporary table from the another worksheet where you haven't created this table, then you will not be able to access this temporary table. Okay, and for the transient table means this table will until explicitly dropped, it will not be dropped automatically as in the temporary table. This table is automatically dropped, so transient and permanent table will not be automatically dropped until we use the drop command to drop them. Okay, and the retention period for the transient table is also a 1 day retention period, and it is having a 0 days of the failsafe period. Okay, and for the permanent table, standard edition means which we are using, means that of free trial edition. Okay, so here also it will, this permanent table will not be automatically dropped until we use the drop command to drop it. Okay, it will just remain in our database, okay, until we drop them explicitly. Okay, and it is having the time travel for 1 day only. This is a permanent table, but here in the free trial edition we are having just a 1 day retention period for our database table or the schema. Okay, and it is just having 7 days of the fail safe, okay, fail safe period. Okay, and for the permanent table, for the enterprise and the higher edition, it is also same here until we explicitly drop this will remain in the database. And here it is having a retention period of 0 to 90 days. Here default is 1 and can be modified. You can set according to your need. You can set 20 days, 25 days. Okay, and it is having a fail safe period of the 7 days. Okay, so this is basically the difference of temporary, transient or the permanent table. Okay, so for the temporary table will just remain in the session until session is active, and it will automatically drop until the when you will just log out that session or whenever you will close that session. Okay, and transient table, the transient table, permanent table for the standard edition or for the enterprise edition will remain in the database until we use the drop command to drop them. Okay, and the retention period for transient table is 1 day, and for the permanent table for the standard edition is just a 1 day, and for the permanent we have enterprise edition we have 0 to 90 days, and the fail safe period is also 7 days here and 7 days here also in the standard edition. Okay, so that's all about these tables are permanent table, transient table and the temporary table, and we have just summarized all the things which we have learned here. Okay, so that's all about the today's session. We have discussed about permanent table, transient table and the temporary table, and we have discussed about time travel, retention period or fail safe period as well. Okay, and if you have any doubt then you can ask me on the comment section or you can use that Instagram. Okay, so that's all for today's session, and now we will discuss about these tables, that how to create a permanent table, transient table and temporary table, and we will just understand this time travel type of thing there as well, retention period and fail safe method, and we will just recover these tables by using the retention period. Okay, and the retention period. Okay, so that's all for today, and meet you soon in the practical session of this table. Okay, how to create these tables. Okay, so that video is very important. Please watch that video. The link will be given in the description box of the practical session part 2 video of the table types. Okay, so that's all for today. Meet you soon in the practical session of the table types. Okay, so that's all.